Hi, I'm Jen Psaki, and this is the last episode of season 2 of The Blueprint. And what a week to go out on. On the heels of a blue wave, which last week was, and an off year election, including a 34-year-old winning the New York City mayoral race, some Democrats, struck a deal over the weekend to end the shutdown and got not much of a lot. But the question is where you go from here. We've talked a lot this season about the gerontocracy and about intergenerational tension in the Democratic Party. So we thought, why not have the youngest member of Congress on to kind of close us out? His name is Maxwell Alejandro Frost. He's a congressman from Florida. I'm really excited to share what he had to say about all of this. But first, my conversation with Democratic strategist and my dear friend Liz Smith on the emotional roller coaster we are all on right now. Liz Smith, I'm so glad to see you. We are back for episode 6 of The Blueprint. Now, I will start by saying last week when we talked with our friend David Plouffe, we were all over-caffeinated, under-caffeinated. We were on the high of the election. It just all felt great. And our whole goal was to make sure people understood there was a long way to go. And then, bam, just 5 days later, the Democrats, well, not all the Democrats, I should just say 8 members who caucus with the Democrats folded, and here we are. So I just wanted to start there because I think there's a lot about this that is important to understand or discuss as it relates to politics and the party and the future of the party and what the heck is happening. I would also note that happened on Sunday and there was no Bengals game because I think the universe knew that you could not handle both of those things at once. That's what my gut instinct is.
Yeah, I came in slightly less agitated than usual because I did not get to watch the Bengals blow a what should be an insurmountable lead again, but that's the only silver lining.
Instead, you got to watch 8 people, members of the Senate, just blow what was a massive victory last week. Okay, so let's dig into this. So this deal, quote, did not get any extension of the Affordable Care Act healthcare subsidies. What they got, I'm putting in quotes, is an agreement for a vote in the Senate, which basically means nothing because you need 60 votes, and Mike Johnson is not going to do a vote in the House, so that's very little. Their explanations for this also make very little sense to me. One includes SNAP benefits. And of course, 42 million people were impacted by SNAP benefits being withheld. But the courts had already ruled on Sunday night, the appeals court, that they were going to have to move forward with this funding. So it was going to be a battle in court. But the Democrats, or the people on the side of SNAP benefits, were winning that argument. So really, we're talking about delays at airports, which are a massive headache. And also we're talking about RIFs or federal employees being fired when they shouldn't be fired. Not minimal things, but they could have waited longer, including until closer to Thanksgiving and maybe gotten more. Okay, that being said, what this all made me think about was that time that Chuck Schumer just a few weeks ago, who completely flubbed on the shutdown battle in the spring, went out and he was pretty aggressive. And I just want to play this because it's just a reminder of where we were just a few weeks ago.
How the hell did we get here? Donald Trump and the Republican Party are hell-bent on taking health care away from 60 million people, closing community clinics, rural hospitals, nursing homes, all so they can keep giving tax breaks to their billionaire friends. It's a disgrace. So Democrats have 3 words for this. No fucking way. It's literally life or death.
No fucking way. I was like, all right, you've come a long way since the spring when I heard that, right? Now, here we are. And Chuck Schumer says he was against the deal. We don't really know. Who knows? But there still was a deal. There's no healthcare subsidies extended. Very little they got out of it. Let's just I want to talk about why this is so bad and what it means and the political reaction, but let's talk about the people who voted for this and why we think they may have voted for it.
Yes. So you had a group of 8 Democrats, including independent Angus King from Maine. And, a few of them opposed the shutdown from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
A few of them probably would have liked to oppose the shutdown from the get-go. People like Jeanne Shaheen from New Hampshire, Maggie Hassan from New Hampshire, institutionalists, former governors who just don't believe in government shutdowns. You had the 2 senators from Nevada, where you have a lot of federal workers and a big tourism industry that is going to be impacted by the shutdown. You had Tim Kaine from Virginia, who also large federal workforce that's going to be impacted by this. And Virginia has been hit really, really, really hard by everything that the Trump administration is doing. Then, of course, you have John Fetterman, who...
We don't have to analyze that one.
Right. But to me, I mean, this was a failure of leadership from the top down, starting with Chuck Schumer. And the way I was reading a lot of this is that after that kerfuffle in the spring, where the Democratic base was like, hell no, if you do this stuff again, we are revolting. We're going to do our own Tea Party. The leadership decided, okay, well, we got to fight. We got to fight. But the way it came across to me is just like fighting for fighting's sake. A lot of fighting tactics, a lot of videos with like inauthentic cuss words, and a lot of political theater, but no actual strategy, no explaining to the American people, to the Democratic base, to members of the House and Senate what the actual end game is, which is why when this news came down on Sunday, everyone was like, WTF.
What? Yeah, I mean, I think there was an effective message that was pretty aligned on the need to extend the subsidies, right? A better aligned message than we have seen through the course of this year coming out of Washington and elected officials in the Senate. There wasn't universal agreement. That should be the only thing they were fighting on, but that was a pretty high level agreement. They were out there making that argument. But then what is perplexing to me, one of the many things, is that there were these huge victories last Tuesday, which should give some leverage, wind at your back, right? And then there also is this kind of unofficial deadline of Thanksgiving, because members are motivated by wanting to go home and be with their families, by the impact that would have had on travel, by any range of impacts, people being home in their districts for a period of time. So striking this deal 5 days after the election felt, to your point, like maybe it would have ended up this way, but they didn't even go to the nth degree on the leverage they could have used. And that's one of the reasons I think it's so perplexing. They didn't come back with another offer. They didn't go down to the wire of Thanksgiving to make it feel forced. They didn't do anything where they were out there with a big, broad push on healthcare and what this would mean for people. It was just like a weekend dark of night deal. It was just bizarrely implemented.
Yeah. And, you know, I think this says a lot about Schumer, his inability to lead at this moment in time. One, a really important thing that I think people like you and I understand is that when we don't have the White House, the Senate leader becomes one of the de facto leaders of the Democratic Party. So you got the Senate leader, the House leader, DNC chair, and, you know, I've got some issues with that crew in general. But Chuck Schumer has shown that he is not effective at communicating about what he's doing, what the caucus is doing. And I think that if he had been clearer about what the strategy was, what the likely end goals were, why we were having this fight, you would see less of a revolt among the base right now. But two, it's also part of a pattern with Schumer. And like, call me crazy, call me quaint, but I think that leaders need to actually sometimes show leadership. And twice in the last week, we've seen this with Chuck Schumer. Big mayoral election in New York City. And he's asked repeatedly, he would not say whether he voted for the Democratic nominee for mayor. And, you know, either he is afraid of the left or afraid of his donors. That's not leadership. That's weakness. And then with the shutdown now, he's playing this weird game where he's saying, oh, well, I wasn't with that group who did it, and sort of trying to distance himself from them. But you're the leader. You are the person who is supposed to be holding the caucus together. So either you knew about it and you were tacitly signing off on it, or you were simply too weak to hold the caucus together. And I think both of those things are unacceptable. And both of them speak to why there is so much frustration among Democratic senators in the Senate with him, and even more frustration among the base. Like, we're not just talking among Bernie bros. There is, Evelyn Normie libs. They are out there with their pitchforks on the streets for Chuck Schumer.
It's pretty across the board. And, it's interesting. And you and I talked to a lot of people behind the scenes. It's even though nobody, as of this taping, has called for Chuck Schumer in the Senate to step back from being in leadership, privately, people are just waiting for this long nightmare to be over. And I will say he was a great leader at one time. 10 years, 5 years, 10, 15 years ago, he could raise a lot of money. He knew how to move the caucus. But the problem is he has not kept up with the times, and he's not kind of working in the tactics of the moment. And that's why I frankly feel like having this deep knowledge of what happens during government shutdowns or what candidates typically work to defeat vulnerable Republicans, it's kind of irrelevant right now because we're in a very different moment. Let's talk about some of the candidates, because I think, if people in the Senate are being a little careful publicly right now, even though some members of the House have been out there, the candidates are being less so. And this is quite telling because it tells you sort of the politics of the moment. And one of the most interesting ones, Stephanie Shaheen, who is the daughter of course, Senator Jeanne Shaheen, who was part of the group of 8 who voted with Republicans on this reopening of the government with while getting very little. She's running for House seat in the state, and she was critical of the deal. And here's what she said: improving health care has been the cause of my life. It's why I'm running for Congress, so I cannot support this deal. That could not be any more clear. And there are across the board candidates with very different ideologies who are sending similar messages. And one of the first videos I saw was from Mallory McMorrow, who's of course running the Senate primary in Michigan. I just want to play that, and we'll talk about that race in a moment.
All right. We have got to talk about this deal that just passed through the Senate because it is a bad one. We got to do things very differently. The old way of doing things is not working. We need new leaders in the Senate. Now is not the time for a deal that is nothing but a broken promise.
Look, she's called for that before, but it's interesting because that is representative of what you hear from a lot of people who are running for office, including people who are vulnerable, who are sitting members. Like Jon Ossoff is a senator from Georgia, perhaps the most targeted member of the current Senate up for re-election next year. He voted against this deal. But what do you think this all should tell people about where people are in the country? I guess people running for office are in a very different place than a certain set of members in the Senate.
Right. And full disclosure, I'm a long-term friend and advisor to Mallory McMorrow. And but I thought her video was good, very plain spoken, saying there was no strategy here, and we need new leadership. And it's not just her saying that. If you look,
all the Michigan candidates are saying it in the primary.
They all said at least that it was a bad deal.
A version of that. Yeah.
And in other Senate primaries, big ones like in Illinois, Iowa, you similarly see the Democratic candidates saying this is a bad deal. And in some of them, also echoing what Mallory said, which is we need new leadership in the Senate. And what that reflects, honestly, is what Democrats are hearing on the ground. I go to a lot of these state party dinners. They're campaigning every day. The base is pissed off with Chuck Schumer. They are so pissed off about the gerontocracy. They're so pissed off about what they see as feckless leadership. They are so pissed off about just losing over and over and over again to Donald Trump. They really want new leaders who will fight, but also who know how to message, right? So that we're not saying, hey, no effing way, we're backing down. And then 2 weeks, it's like, well, actually, yeah, effing way, we're backing down. A lot of the energy in these Senate races, of course, is going to be against the Republicans. But I think in the primaries, you are going to see a lot of energy against Chuck Schumer, the status quo, the failed politics of the past that continue to lead us to these moments where we get all jazzed, we get this excitement, and we fold once again.
Yeah. I keep thinking about what David Plouffe said to us last week. If you're running right now, you have no obligation to support or endorse the institutions or the current leadership. And that is so different from how it used to be. And many of the races you and I have been a part of over the course of years, it used to be kind of be gentle about any critiques. You wanted their support, you wanted their money. And now it's like off to the races with people criticizing.
Yeah, I think it could be more of a impediment, frankly, to have the imprimatur of Chuck Schumer's support than positive.
Yeah, no question about it. So you mentioned before, and I'm a huge believer in this too, this is kind of about more than the shutdown. This is about the need to wake the F up and think about the tactics and the approaches and the strategies that people are deploying. And some of that we're seeing take place in a lot of the races out there. And one of them is kind of interesting that I don't think there's been a lot of conversation about is this New York governor's race. You are one of my New York sources of information because you know a lot of things. What is going on there?
Well, I was hoping to take a little bit of a breather from New York politics after
can't.
Oh my God, I cannot.
It's never over. There's always
right.
something.
So I've worked on New York gubernatorial campaigns before, most notably for Andrew Cuomo, and his successor, Kathy Hochul, is the incumbent right now. And a year ago, after the election, she looked like she was in a sort of a tough spot. She looked like she was in a weak position. She hadn't really grown into the role of being governor. You know, you have to deal with so much stuff. All the proceeds in Albany, the mayor of New York, the president sniping at you, and it's a big job. But over the last year, she's really shown that she's grown into it. I think she's gotten a lot better at handling the Trump administration. And she did something pretty surprising a few weeks ago when you had Chuck Schumer, Kirsten Gillibrand, Hakeem Jeffries sort of keeping Zohran Mamdani at arm's length. She went out and endorsed him at a rally and has appeared with him multiple times since, not because they agree on everything, but because she realized this is going to be the likely next mayor of New York, and we need to put up a united front against what we expect is going to be coming our way from the Trump administration. And we also need to be working together. That's something New York mayors and governors haven't done a lot in the past. And in doing so, did she probably piss off some of her donors, probably piss off, some of her more right-leaning Democratic supporters? Yeah. But I think she showed a little bit of backbone and strength in willing to take that risk. And now, back then there was a thought that maybe Richie Torres would challenge her. He dropped out saying, I'm impressed by her. She's got a challenge right now from the left, from her former LG, Antonio Delgado. Does not seem to be picking up a lot of steam, which again was why it was smart for her to go out with Zohran Mamdani. Meanwhile, the mess is on the Republican side. And you've got Elise Stefanik announced the other day, and Elise Stefanik, who
no one has gone through more of a political evolution than her. She might be the winner of the political evolution.
Right. And no one has aligned themselves closer to Donald Trump. And she's running early on a very Chitterelli-esque campaign where she does not disagree with Donald Trump on anything. And not only is she getting criticized by Democrats for that, Republicans are saying that. Bruce Blakeman, the Nassau County executive, is looking to run for that seat and frankly would be a much stronger candidate. And we're seeing people like Mike Lawler decline to endorse Elise because he could help Republicans potentially pick up seats on Long Island. So what we thought was going to be a very messy race for Democrats is now looking like it's going to be a very messy race for Republicans in New York.
Now, New York, even New York State, is not the same politics as lots of other places in the country. And there are going to be people running who are going to have to distance themselves if Republicans try to tie them to Mamdani, no question about it. But Hochul has not been hurt by this to date. In fact, she looks a lot less scared of her own shadow than she did a year ago. She
does. And a smart thing she's done is even as she has gone out and endorsed Zohran Mamdani, she said, I disagree with a lot of his proposals. Yeah. And you know what? You know who's not doing that? With someone who plays unpopularly statewide? The Republicans, like Blakeman and Stefanik, because they're terrified of distancing themselves from Trump. And I think that will be a big problem in a general election in New York, especially if we see some of the trends that we saw in New Jersey, where Latino, Black voters, Asian voters started to move back toward Democrats. That would be bad for Republicans and good for Democrats here.
Liz Smith, thank you so much for doing this with me. We've talked about all of the things, including Joe Burrow and Joe Flacco and the Bengals, but mostly politics. But thanks again.
Yeah, it's been full of ups and downs, just like the Bengals' current season, and I enjoyed every second of it. Thrilling, and always love to talk with you, Jen. Thank you for having me.
Congressman Maxwell Frost, it is so great to see you. A long time ago, long before a lot of these things happened, we went to a record store. And you've been very busy and active as a member of Congress, as an activist, as somebody calling for big, bold ideas. And I want to talk to you about all of that. There's so much I want to dig into with you, including the Democratic Party, what the hell is happening. But I just want to start with the shutdown because it's just on the minds of a lot of people. Yeah. And you've been critical of the deal. I've been critical of the deal, I think for good reason. I mean, Democrats, frankly, didn't get much. They definitely didn't get what they said they were bargaining for. You're also familiar with the mechanics of Washington. What do you kind of wish for people out there who are trying to understand what could have been done and what should have been done? What frustrates you most about what you wish they would have done?
Well, yeah, and I struggle to even call it a deal, right?
Yeah.
Because that would assume
Fair.
that we really got something out of it, and I would argue that we really didn't get much, if anything, out of it. And a lot of what frustrates me, and part of the issue is that when we're a team, right? Or we're supposed to be a team, right? And we're coming into something together, and I think that it's important to realize, number one, not just the election on Tuesday, but every poll, everything we see shows us that the people were with us on it. And I don't like using the term winning the shutdown.
Yeah,
but
it's kind of gross.
It's a very gross thing to say. But what I will say is people were understanding our argument, and people were blaming Donald Trump and the Republican Party, rightfully, for them losing their health care or the health care costs going up. And the election helped solidify that for us. And so for me, after Tuesday, I said, well, we got to keep going with this, with understanding that we're trying to open the government, right? That's what we're trying to do. We want the government to be open, but we also want to save healthcare. And I actually got a heads up about this deal or whatever. And the thing I asked was, when did these conversations start? And part of what I learned is that, and I'm not sure how much of this is reported, but part of what I learned is really almost from the jump, there was groups of these senators who had kind of expressed to Republicans that at some point they'd come around.
Yeah, Ali Vitale reported on that this morning, actually.
Well, I mean, what the hell? That takes the entire thing and the entire tactic, the entire fight. It makes it hard. Yeah, it makes it hard to see a place where we're going to actually come out and save people's health care at the end of this. But the one thing I'll say, though, that I think is important, I'm not saying this to calm people down because I'm furious at what those Senate Democrats did. And I'm also furious at the fact that they did it like alone, right? We're supposed to be a team working together.
And sort of weirdly over the weekend. But yes, continue.
And weirdly over the weekend. But the thing I want to tell people, too, is that this fight isn't over for healthcare, and you can hold both things at the same time. You're going to hear people tell you the fight isn't over to try to get you to calm down. I'm not trying to get you to calm down. I'm telling you the fight isn't over so you can stay involved in it because we still have time here to help save not just ACA tax subsidies, but help reverse stuff that we've seen happen through Build Back Better, and we still need to, be engaged in it.
I mean, the fact that there were members saying that they were going to come around early on is not particularly surprising to me, though it's very frustrating. Is it generational? Is it misunderstanding that kind of the game, that everything has changed, or it's protection of the institution they've been a part of? What is it?
I think it is generational. I think number one, and you know this, almost more than most people, is that the way the Senate used to work, right? A tradition that people, I think miss, and a lot of members of Congress miss, and that they're still grasping for. And I think that's part of the issue that we're in here is that when we have Democrats living in a political world that doesn't exist anymore and Republicans living in reality, we will lose. I saw someone on TikTok approached a staffer on the Senate side that were talking about this, and they were saying, well, this, I think will dissuade Democrats from going out to vote. And the person said, well, this isn't about votes. What are you talking about? This isn't about votes. It's about everything. It's about the politics. It's about the votes. It's about the healthcare. It's all the things all the time. And I don't want to say generational in that I think it's an age thing. I don't necessarily think it's an age thing. But I do think there's people who have in their mind moved to reality of where we're at. And the fact of the matter is we're in a completely new political time. Republicans have been here for a while, right? And I would even argue even before Donald Trump, to a degree, right? But now we're at this point where it's full-blown authoritarian government. We're fighting neo-fascism. We're fighting a president who doesn't care about the law. And it doesn't mean we need to break the law. I'm not saying we need to be more like him, but we need to unshackle ourselves from the way things have been so we can be more like ourselves. And I think that is really what we saw during the shutdown, is we were being ourselves, full unapologetically for working people. And guess what? People were with us on it. And I think that's important. So, yeah, I'm very pissed off about the whole thing. And I also feel for a lot of people in tough races in the House, right, who stood strong on this as well, and have been screwed over by these senators too.
Look, I've been in this town, I've been working in politics a long time, and politics is always about the moment in time you're living in, right? And not sticking your head in the sand like an ostrich and pretending that
Yeah.
things haven't changed, because things do change. And we're in a very different world. I
Yeah.
think this applies to everything from redistricting to the kind of candidates running out there to what scandal even means anymore. It applies much
Yeah.
beyond the shutdown. And I have not found a single Democrat running for Senate in primaries. All of them may disagree on things, who have said that this deal is good, right? What's also interesting is historically, there's been sort of an embrace of leadership, current leadership by candidates, right? Because that's where you get money from, right? The DSCC and the DCCC, or you're kind of valuing the institution. Things feel a little flipped on their head in that regard. And if I was talking to David Plouffe about this last week, if I were advising candidates, I would say, don't feel obligated, right? I mean, you don't, those rules are kind of out the window. What do you think about kind of Chuck Schumer? Can Chuck Schumer lead this fight to get healthcare affordability? I mean, to get the Obamacare subsidies passed? I mean, he is currently, but can he lead it moving forward? What about Jeffries? I mean, how do you think about current leadership in this moment?
Yeah, well, I'm obviously not happy with what happened in the Senate, and I think that you think about someone like Jeffries, who obviously has to wrangle a lot more
Yeah.
members, right?
The
And
House
in
is
many
the Wild West.
Yeah, right. It's like more to manage, like like logistically, and
Mhm.
also in terms of people where they're at around the country and what they believe in. And we were able to keep things together, right? And there weren't people going off to try to make deals without everybody knowing about it and moving things forward. Now, obviously, I know that the power was in the Senate at this point. But we held together, which I think shows that our leadership is solid in this moment, right? And which I think is really important. On the Senate side, I mean, there's a lot of reports as to what happened with what, if he sanctioned it, if he did it. I don't know the specifics,
Me
and I don't
neither.
like to. Yeah, I don't like
Yeah.
to talk about it. But at the end of the day, we do know that this happened, and we do know that there was an inability to keep it from happening. This is the second big time I've been very disappointed with the Senate this year, obviously during the first CR as well. And I think it shows something that you have candidates saying, like, essentially running on this as a part of their platform, which I think shows that, yeah, I mean, it's probably time for new leadership on that side. I was listening to this interview with Bernie, and he was talking about this as well, saying, well, he's thinking about the next step, right? And like what happens after that. And I respect that a lot because he's in that body and I'm not. He knows like the politics of it more than I do. And he probably knows something that a lot of us, don't, in terms of where things would go. And
Yeah.
might not be where people want it to go, I think is what he was trying to tell us there.
Bernie Sanders will surprise you. I don't have to tell you this. I know he's been
Yeah.
sort of a person, you've been like sort of a mentor to you. Tell me a little bit. Let's talk about Bernie, and because you've talked about Bernie Sanders, Senator Bernie Sanders, and Barack Obama in a different way as being sort of two people you've looked to at different moments. How have they each guided you in your own career in different ways? I suspect, but tell me about it.
Well, yeah. I mean, Obama was the first political figure I looked up to in my entire life, right? And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that, I'm a kid. I'm watching his speeches. This is someone who more or less had the same hair as me. I used to have shorter hair, the same hair as me, and I was very inspired by him off rip. But I'd go to school, and I was always involved in these speech competitions in elementary school. And of course, everyone would say, "You're like Obama," because I'm a young black kid who's doing speeches, right? And
Yeah, it's a little.
Yeah, I know. But people saying that actually led me to listen to him a lot more, and actually seek out his speeches. And he was really the first person that got me inspired about politics, and I saw myself represented in it. I remember one of my first like months in DC. I have this like surprise meeting on my calendar, and I pull up somewhere, and it's Obama. It's President Obama, and he met. It was myself and a few other members of Congress. It was like AOC and Marie Gluesenkamp Perez across the ideological spectrum. Just a lot of young people, and we just kind of chopped it up for a while, and it was surreal to me.
People think he's not paying attention, but he is very much paying attention.
Oh, he's been, yeah. I mean, in the room too, he'd kind of go across and speak to each one of us, and he was talking about my race, and I was like, Obama knows about my race.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
It's like it gives him life seeing
Yeah.
people like you and all of the people you mentioned who are kind of out there doing the work. I think he feels somewhat restrained right now, which there's critics of that and things, but I love that story.
And then I would say the next big figure that comes along is Bernie. And for Bernie's role in my life before I even knew him or worked for him or said anything to him was that I think he helped me refine my politics. And he helped me connect my values to policy that reflected my values. For me before that, it was more, it was more black and white for me, right? And and I wasn't really diving into the policy of things. I was I'm a Democrat, true blue. I believe in this generally, but I couldn't really talk about policy. But Bernie questioned that for a lot of people, right, across the entire country. And he helped me kind of refine what I believed in. For people who don't know, I used to work for Bernie, like producing events.
Yeah.
And so I take a lot from him. And, he's someone who has been a mentor to me. And I think he shows, number one, how to galvanize a movement and use that movement for political change. And that is something that the right has done. For bad, for evil, right? And galvanizing this kind of righteous anger working people have. And I think Bernie taps into that as well. I mean, a lot of these swing voters, when you talk to them and you say, because when we say swing voter, people often think that automatically means that on an ideological scale, they're a moderate person. And they might be, they might not be. I mean, there are swing voters who are way to the left and way to the right and all in between. But what I find that connects them all is less like a policy or less that, but more of like an attitude towards the way things are going. And so a lot of these folks, you ask them, who's your top two politicians? And they might say Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. That's interesting to me.
Wild.
Right? Yeah. That's really interesting to me. And a lot of people will hear that and like, brush it aside. But I think within that is a lot of answers that Democrats need.
The Democratic Party had kind of a good united front on fighting for healthcare, right?
Yeah.
Fighting against the authoritarian tendencies of Trump. And now everybody's got to kind of move forward, right? So when you think about the fight to kind of get the premium tax credits passed, which is very, very popular, I like to always just throw out the statistic that in Little Mike Johnson's district, 20% of people rely on SNAP benefit. I mean, these are things that are incredibly important and people benefit from. How can House members who are not for this be pushed to realize they need to be for this and vote for it? Is that out of the realm, unrealistic given Trump's hold, or what do you think?
I don't think it's out of the realm because I think Trump's hold it's still on the Republican Party, but I do think that it's easing up. Not because he wants it to ease up, but I think this last election has freaked a lot of people out, and especially people in kind of more frontline, more difficult Republican districts. So we're going to see one of three things happen with these type of people. One, they're either just going to say, I'm not going to run for re-election, which is happening. They're running for a different office. They're not running for office at all. They're doing this, they're doing that. Two, we're going to start to see more distinction and them trying to distinguish themselves from Donald Trump. We saw this in the first Trump term, right? In the midterms too, a little further out. And then three, they'll just stay full MAGA Trump, and then they'll lose the race. And so I think we're going to start seeing more and more of this. The new news about the files that we received regarding Epstein and these emails.
That story is insane.
That story is insane. But like that, and then these offices getting bombarded with calls and emails about people's healthcare going up. I think it can move people. I really do. Now, do I think it can move everybody? No, but we don't need everybody. We just need like two more, I think, to join us. And I know that There's some members of the House that are pushing through a discharge petition, which I think is important. Like, you got to think like an organizer, right? You take a step back. We want people to do something, but you got to give them the vehicle to do it, right? And they're not going to produce this vehicle out of nowhere. And the discharge petition is simple and it's easy, right? And it's go sign this to help save our healthcare. It's
Yeah.
not go like say you're for this. No, it's go do this thing, and it makes it easy. And like I always think during Black Lives Matter, when we'd be in like some person's house, like 20 of us organizing in Orlando, figuring out how we're going to push the local politicians on our issues and stuff, and there would be a million things people would want to say, and I'd always say, why don't we let's get one. Let's get one that we think can happen and that would be transformational, and let's just be relentless every single day in pushing it. And people should think about that in this moment too. What's the one, right? Or two or three, but I'm a fan of like getting it down. And then how are they going to do it? Are we asking for something abstract, or are we being specific? Go sign the damn petition to save our healthcare, right? And I think that's important.
There's a discharge, but that's so interesting. I mean, a discharge petition is sort of a tactic, a tool, I should
Yeah.
say, that hasn't been used successfully a ton in the past, right? But you
No,
haven't
yeah.
in the past had a Speaker of the House that's waiting for a call from the president to basically tell him if he can go
Exactly.
eat lunch, right? So this is like
Yeah.
a new, interesting tactic.
Yeah.
So there could be one on healthcare. It sounds like one circulating, which
there-
it's yeah.
Yeah, that's a discussion going on. I'm very pro doing it.
Yeah.
My hope is that it gets done because I think it's important with like it's us using our tools here in Congress, but it's also us giving a tool, right, to advocates, to organizers, not just on the left, like across the entire spectrum, to give their representatives a very specific thing they want them to do. Because this whole thing of like calling for Mike Johnson to do something, the dude is a
Not gonna
full-on-
do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Billionaire protector, Donald Trump's lapdog. That's it, and he's locked into that role. And so I think we gotta like not shift. We should still yell at him, but like look at the members as well, because a lot of them are very nervous. I can tell you that.
Yeah, yeah. Grassroots movements do not start typically from pressure on the top person. You know better than
Nope.
I do. Let me ask you. It's so funny. I feel like people like you wear this mantle of like you're the youngest. You know, one of the young. Are you still the youngest member of Congress? Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
still the youngest, and my hope is that that needs to change next
Yeah,
Congress.
you're
because
ready. You're ready
I am
to pass
getting
the
older.
mantle.
I'm ready to pass the mantle, and I am getting older. So if if I'm still here in like 2 terms and I'm still the youngest, that means we're not electing young people,
I
which
don't
is
know
a
if
big
that
problem.
makes you feel better. We have this like genius young woman, Leah, on our team who described you as not as young anymore. You know, meaning
Oh
like,
wow! Okay,
because
great.
she's younger than you, meaning like you've been around a while, you know? And I was like, he's
I
the
am
ripe
elder
old
Gen
age.
Z.
You're
I am
elder.
the elder Gen Z. I'm the oldest a Gen Zer can be, right? Like,
I don't
I'm
even know
28.
what elder Gen Z. Okay. My question I really want to ask you is you can't translate for your entire generation. I know you're asked this all the time, but when you look out there, kind of what the Democratic Party is doing, or people who are running to be leaders of the Democratic Party and trying to appeal to people, I'm going to say under the age of 35, what is super cringy to you? And what do you think is actually spot on?
I think I mean it's like hidden in the question you asked, right? Is that a lot of times I'll get asked about like how do young people want to hear this? What are young
Yeah.
people like? What words can I say? What
You're
trend
like,
can
can I
I do?
speak for the whole generation? of
Yeah, I
people?"
don't. Number one, I'm like, I don't speak for the whole generation. Like, I represent Florida's 10th congressional district.
Yeah.
But what I think is really important is that's part of the problem. Is people trying to find like this magic silver bullet? Like, what can
Yes.
I say? What trend can I do? What like can I throw in some like slang and stuff? And it's like, no. I think like what young people want is authenticity, right? Be authentic, be consistent, and give your message in a high quality way, and also have a message that actually resonates with people. And I think that's what's really important. There is no like trend, there is no this, there is no that. And I talk to members a lot about this on social media too. I was never really great at social media growing up. It wasn't really a big thing for me. I was like a band nerd, and that's really what I did. and honestly, it wasn't until earlier this year that I really I think my team and I really kind of found out how people wanted to hear from me online. And that's honestly something that I think my first term, we were figuring things out. We were throwing stuff out the wall. We were trying to see what made sense. And we found out that really just directed cameras on my couch and different things like that. And like I did this video with remember the Coldplay controversy thing?
Did anyone not remember that? I
Do you
feel like
remember
that woman is still
Well,
speaking out, and I'm not
I
sure why.
know, I know. But I spent like 5 seconds talking about it, and then I went to talk about Alligator Alcatraz and the work
Yeah.
I was doing there, and that video educated a lot of people, right? Millions of hits, and the reason I bring it up is because I always encourage members to think about the content they put out and the message, but also realize that if you put out a video of you doing some trend, some funny thing with no substance in it, that's fine. Like people can do what they want. It's not my style, but everyone can do what they want. You might get some followers from it, but remember that the way you build your following matters.
Yeah.
Because if you build it that way, people will expect that from you. And when you try to talk to them about serious stuff, it might not
They don't
perform
want
as
it.
well. They
Yeah,
don't want
that's-
it. And you see it all the time with like creators who have like huge followings, and then you'll see like some videos they have that have like not really a lot of engagement, and you'll look at it, it's usually something that's like a departure from their normal thing. Don't chase a viral moment. Don't chase something like to talk to the young people. Like be yourself and realize that a lot of what young people want isn't someone like necessarily talking their slang or this and that. All the issues that everyone's facing right now in terms of cost of living, in terms of being a working class person in this country, young people are feeling heavily, right? Hungry, no place to live. We're at the highest rate in our country's history of people graduating college and not being able to find work, full-time work, right? And this is a huge deal. And I see it in my own friends, right? That's why I have to tell folks it's not just a messaging thing. If you say that we just have a messaging problem, it means you're saying we're doing everything right, not enough people are hearing
Yeah.
about it. I don't think that's the truth. I think that's part of it, but people are hungry for big, bold, transformational politics. No one's interested in like your solution that's going to help some people sometimes around the edges. And I think this is part of the reason why people like Zoran were so successful in New York City. And candidates like that not just talking about cost of living and some abstract, we're going to make life more affordable, but giving people solutions that they see themselves in, I think is important. That's a really big piece of this puzzle that oftentimes like politicians don't think of at first. It's kind of hard to say, well, maybe my politics aren't right in
Yeah.
this moment. And there's a lot of people in the Democratic Party that's true, right?
That's so true. I mean, it's interesting too, because I feel like the desire for big, bold ideas has kind of always been around, but it feels so present right now because sometimes when politicians hear big, bold ideas, they think the opportunity agenda, which there was a lot
Yeah.
of good stuff in there, but it was like a terribly named thing. So how do you think about big, bold without being something that sounds poll tested, right? Something that feels digestible, but also bold, right?
I think part of what's happened too, Jen, is over time, we talk about practicality in politics, or like what's the center of politics. Is when I say big, bold, a lot of times people think I'm automatically meaning like ideological spectrum and this.
Sure.
And I'm not talking about that. I'm just on like big ideas that people will feel and that they can see government working for them. And I think over the last many decades in politics, this conversation of what's the center of our country, what's the center of politics, has come to be not what most people want, which is really what the center should be, but what is easiest and most achievable in DC at this moment. That's what most politicians think when they're saying the center of politics.
Yeah.
I would say the center of politics is policy like single payer healthcare, right? Like, and I don't mean that in terms of it's the easiest thing to do right here,
No.
right now.
Yeah.
I mean that in terms of that's what most people want. So that's
Yeah.
the center of our country in terms of the healthcare debate. And the more that we have people who understand this, the more we can do it. And I always bring it up to people like the way we vote is we put a card in a card reader and we put yay, nay, or present. And the difference between us being able to pass bold legislation like Medicare for All and different things like that and not being able to do it is influencing or changing the people pressing the buttons. And there'll be one day that we're in there and it passes by a few votes and the world thinks it happened overnight, but it was anything but overnight. And I think that's important. There's always this like binary in politics between like, are you for the big ideas or are you for taking steps to get there? You need both. And the fact of the matter is, any big thing that's ever happened in this country, there was a ton of steps to get there. The issue is when you have politicians value one at the expense of the other. Right? Oh, Medicare for all will never happen. And so let's not even think about it. Let's put together this piecemeal healthcare system that doesn't help anyone. Or people who say, if you're, making little changes in our system isn't worth it unless we get the big thing. All of it's important. Like, I think my job is about filling cracks in the system and also looking at the full thing too. And I think we need more people to think that way, because this whole like headbutting is just such a waste of time, and it's keeping our party further away from where the heart of the people are at. I'm not a litmus test person, but as we look at the people who want to run for president, the question is, do you think the rebuttal to Republicans removing healthcare from 17 million people and then raising healthcare costs for 25 million people is let's get it back to where it was? I'm not sure that's the rebuttal. I think the actual thing to respond to that is let's simplify the system and make sure that everybody has healthcare in this nation and that it's actually good healthcare. Because that's part of my problem when we talk about the universal healthcare conversation. A lot of people have healthcare and it sucks. So it's not just that we need everyone to have sucky healthcare, is we need everyone to have good healthcare.
We don't want everyone to have sucky healthcare. This is such an this is actually a great place to end, because I think I could talk to you for 3 hours, but you are a member of Congress, so you have other things you have to do. Because one of the things I'm hearing from you, which I think is so important for people to hear from someone like you, who like really kind of came up as an activist, has become a very impactful member of Congress, is that change doesn't happen in a month or 2 months. Sometimes it takes years, and it's about continuing the fight forward. And it still means having bold ideas to be proud of and keep fighting for. Congressman Maxwell Frost, it is such a delight talking to you. Thank you. I feel like put this conversation in my veins.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on anytime.